Hello, and welcome to Strange Times number 9. Catching a catfish. I'm just going to really summarize this article because it's quite a big article. But I recommend you go and check it out just to get a sense of how far some of these people will go. It's full on. I just cannot wrap my head around what would motivate a person to do this. If you don't know what a catfish is, it's a person who basically has a fake online life. So they've got fake accounts and fake names and all of this sort of stuff, and they try and lure people in. It's kind of like a scammer, like your typical, I better not say any countries, but you know who I'm talking about. Anyway, this is the story of an Australian woman called Lydia Abdelmalek, who was 29 at the time of the story, which was only put up fairly recently. The reason why I'm doing this story is because I saw a couple of weeks ago that this woman had been put in jail for 2 years and 8 months jail time. And I just found the story really interesting because the psychology behind it, just is alien to me. Anyway, this woman, Lydia, for years, let me start. So it talks about this woman, Emma, who was sucked in by this lady, Lydia. And Lydia had made up this account, this Facebook account of this semi-famous actor in Australia called, what's his name? Lincoln Lewis, who is an actor on a soap opera in Australia, and also he's the son of a very famous football player, Wally Lewis. And anyway, Emma had went to school with Lincoln, and she received this message from Lincoln saying basically, how you going? It's been years since I've spoken to you. And it continued on, and she kind of fell in love with Lincoln. And then one day, through another friend, I think, she got Lincoln's real number. And it turns out that Lincoln was a false account, and the lengths that this woman, Lydia, went to create this fake account is unbelievable. You got to read the story. You'll shake your head. But that's not all. She had hundreds of personalities and was playing with the lives of tens of people, heaps of people. And she eventually got caught and charged, and like I said, she went to jail she's in jail now for 2 years, 3 years almost. Unfortunately, the first victim ended up committing suicide over this. And so it sort of sickens me that people can do this. Like, who would do it and why? I can understand scammers. They're doing it for greed. They're after the money. But this woman wasn't after money. She was just manipulating people for some weird reason. And it says here, I just got some notes. In a 3-week hearing, Detective Senior Constable Kelly Moore and Prosecutor Sergeant Luke Devlin outlined a slew of evidence against Abdelmalek, Lydia. Officers linked various phone numbers used in the scheme back to the accused. Her IP address was also linked to various email accounts. She actually sent gifts to these people. I think she actually gave them money as well. Weird. Gifts she had sent her victims had her parents' P.O. box as the return address. Jess and Emma, 2 victims, had provided hours of audio recordings of the stalker that police matched with the accused voice. Her mobile phones were littered with usernames and passwords and phone numbers, love letters and photos of her victims, and the celebrities that she impersonated. And this is with modern day technology. We're starting to move into this newer stuff with the deep fake imagery where you can manipulate the facial expressions of anyone online, and also voice modulation where you can imitate any voice. So, these sort of people, once they get a hold of that, it's just going to be... Just be careful online, everybody. Just be careful. Alright, enough of that. People are freaky, eh? They scare me more than the paranormal. Big Bird. A thigh bone found in a Crimean cave belonged to a huge species of bird that was as heavy as a polar bear. The fossil, which was discovered along the northern coast of the Black Sea, dates back between 1.5 and 1.8 million years to a time when Homo erectus roamed the European continent. Known as... There's no way I'm going to try and pronounce that. I'll put it up there. This gargantuan flightless bird was 3 times the weight of today's ostriches and stood 3.5 meters tall and could run at significant speeds. It would have provided our ancestors with a plentiful supply of meat and bones, feathers and eggshells. And then it just goes on about they haven't come across a bird that big, and it became extinct, or whatever, like 1.2 million years ago. The reason why I included this article, besides I find it interesting, is this strange fact that all of the fauna and plant life and even insect life from ancient times is huge. It's massive. All the dinosaurs, huge. And, engineers and scientists and various experts claim that an animal that big just could not be mobile in any significant way on this earth with the gravity as the earth is. And so there's this idea, this theory, which sounds crazy, almost as bad as flat earth. But this idea is expanding earth. The idea that the earth somehow was smaller in the past. And if you haven't checked it out, there's some pretty interesting points about the land masses, how they, if you shrink the earth, they link up on both sides like it was like one giant ball of dirt, basically, and it broke apart. Another fair point is on a smaller earth, you could have these, it would have less gravity, so you could have these giant creatures. So if you haven't checked that out, I definitely recommend you look into it. It's, if nothing else, it's very interesting. This one's pretty cool too. It's a sciencey one. Scientists are attempting to prove the existence of parallel universes. The idea that we live in one of a practically limitless number of near identical worlds is nothing new, having been proposed previously many times by physicists, including Hugh Everett, who in 1957 put forward his many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. Everett's theory suggests that there exists a potentially infinite number of parallel universes in which every possible permutation of history is played out. In one universe, for instance, you may have died in a car accident last month, while in another, you may have become the President of the United States. Every conceivable outcome has happened in at least one of these universes. Each version of history has played out somewhere. Controversially, however, Everett also suggested that none of these universes are ever able to influence our own universe, thus making the whole concept impossible to test. Now, though, scientists at Oak Ridge National Laboratory in eastern Tennessee are hoping to challenge this assertion by conducting an experiment that could, in theory, produce evidence to suggest that particles can move back and forth between parallel universes. The research builds upon anomalous results from the 1990s involving neutron particles which seemed to break down into protons at differing rates. instead of at the same time, or instead of at the same rate as would be expected. The experiment itself will involve firing a beam of neutrons at a solid wall with a neutron detector set up on the other side. Normally the detector should pick up nothing at all because the neutrons cannot pass through the wall. However, scientists believe that some of them may temporarily oscillate into a mirror universe and back, enabling them to pass through the wall where the detector will pick them up. Whether such an outcome will be enough to prove the existence of parallel universes, however, remains unclear. And can you imagine how much validity that would bring to all of these stories about time slips and glitches and the Mandela effect and all of that sort of stuff, if they could prove scientifically that parallel universes actually do exist? Fascinating. Just fascinating. Okay, here's the last one for the day. Here we go. This one is an old story that I found yonks ago. I've got like this Word document that's just full of old stories that I've sort of, if I come across a story, I'll save it. Unfortunately, because it was so long ago, I didn't include the link like I usually do. I did this video a little while ago called Not Quite Human, and it was actually narrated by one of my strange mates, Strange Unknowns. Check out his channel. He narrated this story called Plastic Soldiers about these weird looking fake soldiers that this witness spotted in a service station somewhere around Arizona. And he followed it was like a unit, I guess, or a platoon of soldiers. And he sort of followed them when they left, and they ended up going down this remote dirt track, and he could keep eyes on them as they were traveling down this dirt track. He was on the main highway, and they approached this mountain, and the mountain somehow, what happened? They just seemed to drive straight into the mountain. That's right. He didn't see an opening. They just drove straight through and into it. And this story is really similar. It happened near Arizona as well. So, here we go. Military base in mountain. I don't really have a story of my own, but my old landlord told me a freaky story once. I guess he used to work for a company that delivered big stuff as a driver back in his 20s. He'd be 70-ish now. So this happened ages ago. Well, one day, he ended up having to deliver a big truck full of unknown cargo out into the middle of nowhere. Some desert state, Arizona I think it was, because the guy who normally delivered couldn't for some reason. So he is given instructions to drive out to a specific spot where he finds a phone, like literally in the middle of this crapped out desert road. He picks up the phone, and a woman starts asking him to identify himself, which he does. Then he's told to wait. After a short period of time, military vehicles show up, ID him, and tell him to follow. They took him a few miles off-road into the desert to a mountain, which he said magically opened into a huge base that had all sorts of big things inside, covered with sheets. A man came up and signed his papers, and then he was led straight back out, all the way to the main road. Similar description, same area. The only thing is, this happened like 50 years before the first incident. Before the Plastic Soldiers incident, I should say. I guess the phone must have been like one of those old school ones that you see on the side of the highway sometimes for breakdowns and that sort of stuff. Right, well, that's all I've got for today. And I'll see you guys next week. Hopefully. I should be there for number 10 on time. Hopefully. But I don't want to promise. Okay, anyway. See ya.